Greetings everyone. Ayawas Chisay Wadakadite, Dana Sawatsanuni, Dana Guegoscano. And I hope that you're happy, healthy, and at peace. So, Roya Gewan ni Youngets, Ganyange Haganyak Dodom, Waganyato, Anora, Niwagit the road, Dano Swag, and Nuwa Kakanyu. So, my name is Roya Gewan. Canada Revenue Agency knows me as Dan Longboat. And I'm a Turtle Clan Mohawk from Grand River Territory down near Caledonia, Six Nations. So I'm happy to be here in the beautiful land of the Algonquin people. So I'm so happy to be able to be back here. I was here once a couple of years ago, and really nice opportunity to be able to come and share. So I'm thankful that I had an opportunity to be invited here today. So thank you so much to the organizers, and thank you to all of the people that have worked to make our stay and make this event so successful. So I appreciate that, and I'm very thankful for that. So thank you for inviting me. So this morning, I just want to talk to you, briefly about, this idea of spirit and harvesting. A lot of times, we kind of go about our business, and a lot of times we forget about our original responsibilities and our original instructions about how we're supposed to be as human beings. So let me kind of go back, and I'll kind of give you a reference about how we need to think. And because we have largely like a hometown crowd here, and it's hopefully speaking to the choir, preaching to the choir. We have you already have sort of a good understanding of our teachings and a good understanding of our responsibilities. So can everybody hear okay back there? Yeah, you're all right? Yeah. And Phil, you okay with the mics and everything? Good, all right. So let me take you back, and we'll kind of start talking about the origin of knowledge. So a lot of times you'll hear when we talk about indigenous knowledge, and you'll hear that around a lot. People talk about traditional ecological knowledge, tech. Sometimes they'll call it indigenous environmental knowledge or aboriginal environmental knowledge. Sometimes they just refer to it as indigenous knowledge, and it's really plural because, as you know, all of our distinct cultures have emerged in place over a long period of time. And so our understanding of that is that, when they talk about cultures emerging from environment, they talk about that the environment make the culture. In some degree that's true, or did the culture make the environment? And to some degree that's also true. So looking at the nature of our knowledge and where it comes from, when you look at the common publications and the common press, they'll talk about this idea that our knowledge, has been manifested from peoples living in place for a very long period of time, and have, through a process of trial and error, have developed a body of knowledge that has been passed and accumulated over time and passed on to successive generations. So while some of that is true, that there is a large body of knowledge that's associated with a particular place or ecosystem or bioregion or landscape, while that's true, it didn't come through by trial and error. And when you think about, when you begin to kind of think about that, and you look at, just the simple things, and I don't want to say simple in terms of its complexity, but simple in terms of it's a singular thing to think about as our medicines. And I want to thank the ladies that have worked to make our medicines here this morning, that we have the pleasure of partaking, and understand that those medicines are there to make us strong and to enliven our spirit and to connect us to this place. So when you make medicine like that and use that medicine, and I would urge all of you, to at some point during the day to take some of that. That's the thing that strengthens our spirit and enlivens our cellular function in our bodies. So it connects us to place in terms of both physical and spiritual. But when you look at something like medicines, and you start to think of the the sheer number of medicines that are out there. And today, many places, when we talk about medicines, they, kind of focus on mainly plant medicines. And while that's a great undertaking, in the old days, they talk about medicines, and medicines are in everything. So they talk about plant medicines, tree medicines, birds and animals and reptiles, fish medicine, all types of different things that they would use to make medicine that would work, to be able to heal us. Animal medicines, all types of different things that they would use, and the complexity of that. So when you think of the sheer number of entities or the sheer number of elements that manifest themselves and culminate, that a medicine person would use to make medicine to heal or to strengthen or to prevent, sickness and diseases. The sheer number in that's astronomical as to the complexity of that, and as to the actual numbers of different combinations that you can use. And I always like to have a thing, something like, and I'll tell you a little story, and some of you may have heard me talk about this before, but I'll give you a quick refresher on that. So you look in the common press and they talk about, indigenous peoples coming across the Bering Strait. And so that, as we all know, that's a myth, and that's just a suggestion, talking about coming across the Bering Strait. So bear with me for a minute. So you have these small nomadic bands of hunters and gatherers that cross the Bering Strait, and as they come across, they're chasing those big woolly mammoths, and they're hunting them. So they're hunting away, and they try to find these big woolly mammoths, and they hunt them, and they track them, and they run all day long. And so let's just say there's one of the guys that's in that hunting group, and he kind of gets veered off. He's kind of hunting on his own, and he gets veered off. And so he comes back and connects with those guys. They don't have any luck that day, so they all set up camp that night. And then this one guy comes back into camp. So he says, guys, he said, oh man, he says, I was hunting today, and he says, and I got to tell you, I was nearly chased down and eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. And everybody looks at him and goes like, oh yeah, saber-toothed tiger. And he goes, yeah, and I outran him. He says, but I'm really sore. My legs are really sore. My back and shoulders are really sore. He says, from running all day. He says, to get away from that saber-toothed tiger. So he says, oh, that's great, so he says, so one of the guys in that group, he says, oh, like that professes to be a medicine person. Hey, Curtis. And he says, oh, let's try this plant right here. So he's kind of walking around. It's a brand new landscape, right? He's walking around and grabs this plant, puts this plant together like this, and makes it, and puts some water in it. And he says, here, you just like take this and drink this down, and he says, we'll see how you feel in the morning. So the guy takes that medicine, drinks it down. He wakes up in the morning, and it's like, oh man, like this is really, I'm feeling really good. Like I don't have any pain. I'm not tired or anything. He says, I'm not sore anymore. He said, so I'm gonna, I'll take that medicine. So then the medicine guy says, okay, everybody, from now on, this plant here, this medicine here, this is a muscle medicine. So it's good for muscles. So always remember that. So, the next day, or during that day, they're out there hunting some more, and they finally get that saber-toothed tiger, or that big woolly mammoth. They get that big woolly mammoth, and they spear them, they cut them up, and then they cook them, and they're sitting back and they're eating them. So at the end of the day, the guy's sitting there, same guy that's with these legs, he's just sitting there, and he's rubbing his stomach. He goes, oh man, guys, he said, I don't know what to tell you. He says, but every time I eat woolly mammoth, he says, I'll make a pig of myself, and I always eat too much. So he says, my stomach is really sore. So the same medicine guy goes, oh, it's sore stomach, eh? Let me see. Let's take this plant here and make some tea with that and drink that down, and in the morning you'll feel good. So he says, okay, that's great, So makes the medicine, drinks it down, and then he's laying in bed, and they wake up in the morning, and the whole camp wakes up in the morning, and they're getting ready to go. They're going to hunt some more woolly mammoths. So they go out, and they're all packing up their stuff. They see their friends still laying there, still sleeping. So they wake him up and they kind of, come on, let's go. We're getting ready to go hunting. So he doesn't move, and they kind of kick him some more. Doesn't move. Come on, let's go. Shake him like that. He's cold. It's just like, oh, he's dead. So they look at him and they say, okay, the medicine guy goes, okay, from now on, this plant here, that's not a good plant to use, so don't use that medicine. So you start to think of the complexity of all of these plants coming together, like just the sheer mathematical equation that it takes to be able to put those plants together, and the sheer number of them. You can't learn that stuff by trial and error. So here's what they talk about in the oral tradition. So within the oral tradition, they talk about that our great ancestors, that their minds were so good and their hearts were so pure that they could talk to all of creation. And we're told that when our Creator and his brother made all of these different elements within creation, he told them that they would have a special relationship with these coming human beings. So all these different things that we see have a unique relationship with us. They care for us and they help us. But everything in our world, is precipitated upon and built upon this idea of a reciprocal relationship. They help us, but we help them. They provide for us, but we also provide for them. Everything is tied together in everything that we do. So our understanding of that then, when in terms of how we engage with them and how our worldview is built on that process, that idea of those medicines and those plants and all the different things that our people needed, and that how that they were necessitated, to produce our well-being, everything was laid out there for us. So we got to remember, as we all know, that as human beings, we were the last element to be created. We were the last beings to be created. So everything out there is our relations. Everything out there is older than us, and that part of their responsibility, because they're older than us, is to take care of us. But at the same time, we have a unique responsibility to take care of them. Taking care of them means in both physical terms as well as in spiritual terms. And so that idea that when that knowledge come to us, and whenever our great ancestors were impacted by, or they were confronted by a particular problem that they had to face, all they simply did was they turned to all of creation and they asked them for help. And it was those beings that manifested to our great ancestors about how to live in the world and what to do and how to be and how to resolve the problems that we had faced. They came to us either in dreams or in visions, or sometimes they manifested themselves and appeared as beings. However it was, they came to us and they provided for us. And in that process of manifesting themselves and coming to us, they said, this is our names, this is how you will use us, this is our relationship that we will have together, and this is how you will honor us and thank us, and that we will maintain this relationship, this sacred relationship with you. And so they provided for us then those songs, those dances, those speeches, those practices, everything that we needed was provided for us by those elements, and they built within our peoples, within our great ancestors, a unique culture that was tied to and predicated upon our sacred relationship with all of creation, both in terms of our physical being and our physical connection, as well as in our spiritual connection and our spiritual responsibility. So in that process then, that they provided for us, our ancestors put that into our cultural practice, and whenever we were faced with issues, then we manifested that, we used that. And that sacred, beautiful knowledge has been passed on through successive generations. Thousands of generations of our people living in place have passed that on from the very beginning of the human beings right to where we are now, right now. And we have the capacity and the ability to be able to learn those things, to engage with them, and to pass them on to successive generations. And so we're the link in the chain, the successive chain of knowledge and sacred responsibilities that our great ancestors have been provided from all of creation. So we have a huge body of knowledge that has been not out of trial and error, not out of the minds of men and women. Unlike the West, Western knowledge, where the knowledge that has been precipitated in, conventional society are all around us, for the very most part, has been built out of the minds of men. Not all men, only white men. And not all human beings, only men. Not women, not children, not nature, not spirit, only men. And so because it has been precipitated and built from a man's mind, that it is infallible, that it is open to, how would we say it, that it's open to making mistakes. Our knowledge then, on the other hand, all of our knowledge comes from a place of spirit. And because it comes from a place of spirit, it's perfect in its nature. And while we can argue that, well, maybe it's not really helping us out today or doing, what it should be doing today, understand that it has not failed us. We're the ones that we failed it, because we've lost our sacred responsibility. We've lost, our way, our culture, our interaction with them, our practices with them. We've lost that understanding of that. And so now we're in the process of revitalizing that and beginning to relearn those things and to revitalize ourselves and regain our sovereignty as indigenous nations once more and as indigenous individuals. So it's important then to remember that practice is already laid out. Everything that's there is already laid out. And so a lot of times, people will talk about, oh, we're losing knowledge, we're losing our ability to have these different things. And well, that's true in a sense, that by the passing of elders and the passing of knowledge holders, that we're losing their knowledge. But the point of it is that knowledge is still all out there. All of those things are still there. Those trees, those plants, those animals, those birds, those ancestors, those spirit beings, they're all out there. And all we have to do is prepare ourselves to engage with them and to relearn that knowledge and to put it back into practice. So that becomes the task, that at hand. That becomes the work that all of us need to be able to engage in. Learning from our ancestors, learning from our knowledge holders, learning from our elders, learning from traditional practitioners, and at the same time then embedding that and sort of embodying that knowledge and passing that on to successive generations ahead of us. So that's a lot of work, and no other indigenous peoples at any other time in our history have had the opportunity and the responsibility to do that. So, but we're doing that now. And so that's the exciting part. So when we talk about, the things ahead of us and the elements and the different things that are impacting us as human beings, and in particular for us as indigenous peoples and what has impacted us before, this is to me, this is one of the most, or the most exciting time to be born as a human being. To be born as an indigenous person, this is the most exciting time right now, because we have all of the elements that we need to revitalize ourselves as the real human beings. When we refer to that as the real Ongwehongwe, or the real Anishinaabe, or the real Meshkigwa, we're the ones then that have the capacity now and the opportunity to be able to learn those things and to be able to learn them almost at a super speed and to be able to put them into practice. That's why events like this that you're doing this weekend, are so critically important, because you get an understanding, a glimpse of, and an opportunity to connect with those knowledge holders and those practitioners that have learned those skills and have brought those to us, so that we can be able to put them into place and put them into practice. So we got a lot of work to do, it's time that we began to realize that work and begin to roll up our sleeves and to do that work. So part of the things that I want to talk to you about today is that when we talk about harvesting, it's not just a simple act of harvesting, the physical act of harvesting. It's also the spiritual act of harvesting. So when we talked about those things, when those beings came to our great ancestors and they provided all of those practices for us, they said, this is how you will use us, this is how you will engage with us, this is what you will do. And in turn, this is what you will do for us. This is how you will help us. So let's talk about what that looks like, and so we have an understanding of, of that. And I'm going to tell you, like, this is my own understanding of that, from what I've been told over lots of different years and by lots of different people. And this is what I have come to understand. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying that this is the only way to look at it. All I'm doing today is being able to share with you what those people told me a long time ago, as to the best recollection of my memory, and as to the best, I guess, my ability to understand what they talked about. So I'm going to say that, like, whatever makes sense to you, put it in your mind and contemplate it and think about it. And pretty soon, you'll find that many of the things that we'll talk about, you'll make this connection between here and you'll make it here. And that connection between here and here, that's what we would refer to as a truth. So that truth then becomes a heart truth. It becomes not only a mental truth, but also a heart truth. And oftentimes then, here's the most important point. A lot of times we'll hold on to that truth, and we'll say, oh, this is so beautiful, it's so powerful. I'm so happy that I have that. It makes me feel so good. But that's not how it's intended. That's not just how it's intended to be. The reason that we have life, all of us, the reason that we woke up this morning, the reason that we can have, the ability to move about, to move around, and to do the things that exemplify life, is to do just that, is to put those things into living practice. We become the embodiment of those truths and the embodiment of that knowledge, and we become the living examples and the living expressions of what our great ancestors have provided for us so long time ago. So it's like our head, our heart, and our hands to do the work. So that's why, it's so important that we understand and, excuse me, and that we pick up these practices and put them into motion, and to learn them, and to learn them well. And it's not as though that, we're all going to be, the best singers or the best dancers or the best knowledge holders or the best medicine people or the best, moms or dads or uncles or aunties or grandparents. It's not like that we're going to be the best, but our responsibility is to do our best, is to try to do the very best that we can do. So that practice then in understanding what the knowledge and the things that have come forward to us, when we look at that and start to exemplify that and bring that forward, we'll talk about, the example of that. So one of the ones that I like to talk about, like medicine, I don't know medicine, like I don't have the mental capacity for knowing medicines. That's for minds greater than mine. But, for me, it's just being able to understand very basic things that have impacted my life, and at the same time, that are easy for me to understand. So we'll talk about, hunting as an example, but this hunting is a process that is easy for us to understand, but it's only an example of the nature of the entire practice and how it works. So here's my understanding of that. So they talk about, there's a good little hunter right there. So they talk about that a long time ago, it was nature that helped our ancestors. So they talk about that, as the human beings, we gathered together, and they talk about that as the human beings, it was a fall time, and the people were starting to get cold, and their gardens were no longer growing food for them, and they were starting to get hungry. So they were sitting around a fire, and they were talking with each other, and they were talking about how hungry that they were. And so they talk about then Oskunundo, which we refer to as the deer. Oskunundo, they talk about that at the time he was real big. He had real big antlers on his head, and he was like very kind of like big, like, you know, super big, like almost like mythologically big kind of thing, you know what I mean? So they talk about that he came out of the woods, and he came to where the people were, and they looked at him, and they talk about that the people were so afraid that they didn't know what he was. They became afraid of him. So he comes to them and he talks to them. And he says to them, the same creator that made you, he says, is also the one that made me. And he says, my name is Oskunundo. And he says, and we have a beautiful relationship to fulfill, a sacred relationship to fulfill so that we are here to help you, and you're here to help us. It's like, okay, and so they listened to him, and they said, so long ago, he said, the Creator, when he made us, he fashioned us out of earth, and he made a body, and he made legs, made a fluffy tail, and he says, and he put antlers on our heads. He made male and female. He made little ones, and he made old ones. And he says, and we live together, and we live together like in families. And he says, and we have spread ourselves according to what our Creator told us to spread ourselves all around the earth. And you know, when you go back and you listen to our unique creation teachings or our creation stories, those creation teachings are unique to every indigenous nation on the face of the earth. They all have their own understandings of that, and they all go right back to the very sort of beginning of time. What's really powerful about that is that in one instance they talk about when the Creator made different things on earth. They talk about that the turtle island, on the back of the turtle, and how the earth, you know, and again, wish I had time to go into all of this, but that's a whole other lecture. that when the earth was sitting on the back of the turtle, they had made, him and his brother had made different things, and how the struggle that they had, you know, between his brother and the Creator, and how they kind of were fighting sort of for dominance of all of the things on the earth. How one brother was possessed by the idea of dominating all life, and the other brother was really promoting the idea of how all things on earth should work together. All things in creation should help one another. They should all work for the continuation of life. And so that struggle that they had between them, you know, that manifested itself, they talk about in a battle. And so they talk about that the two brothers, they fought so hard. There's a kind of a real long dissertation that kind of goes with it, but the two brothers fought so hard that they talk about that they broke the earth on the back of the turtle, and that's how we get continents. But as they were making different things, they talk about, and the reason I'm telling you this is because when they made different things and they made that deer, because I asked my teacher, the late Jake Thomas, I said, you know, Jake Thomas Gaha, I asked Jake, I said, how is it possible then, you know, that we would have like this idea of evolution? How does that work? He goes, oh, that's a good question. He says, when the Creator made Oskunundo as an example and everything else, when he made Oskunundo, he said he made it like in an immature state. That's like an immature state. What does that mean? He said he didn't finish it so that it would have one form. And so he says, as he made it and it manifested itself and spread itself around the earth, at the time, he says, that's why, you know, as that one earth, when he made it, and as the earth broke apart, how the animals then manifested themselves or changed themselves or adapted themselves to the places that they live. So today, you know, that same Oskunundo, there are little small ones like this big, like in different places in the world. That's how big they get. To, you know, they get big like this, and then real big like this. It's all the same Oskunundo all the way through, but they have adapted themselves to be able to suit the places that they live. So in terms of that, when he said that we spread ourselves around the earth, and he says, and now he says, we've come to you because we realize that your gardens are no longer growing. And as we have been instructed by our Creator that we're here to help you. And so we'll give up our lives to help sustain you and to help feed you. It's like, but this is what you will do. And so they told us about how this practice and the process, would begin. So they said that, in the sky world above us, there are sky world beings, and they live much like our ancestors have lived, from the very beginning of time for us as human beings. They live in families, they live in clans, they hunt and fish, they have gardens, they have medicines, they do all kinds of different things, just like our great ancestors have done for so many years before the coming of the Europeans. And so they talk about then that in the season, the men begin to hunt. And they talk about that as the weather starts to change, that's when the men gather together in the sky world and they hunt. The first animal that they hunt is a bear. And they talk about that they shoot him with their arrows. And as they shoot him with their arrows, his blood drips from the sky and it falls onto earth and it turns the leaves red. That's the time then for us as human beings here to prepare ourselves to get ready for hunting. And that's the time then, that we start to gather our stuff that we have practiced, our art. If we shoot a bow or we shoot a gun or whatever that we do, like today we use guns, a long time ago we used bows, that we would practice those things to become proficient at them so that we wouldn't make them suffer, that we would be very proficient at our skills, that we would, sharpen our knives and do all the things necessary so that when we are harvesting, that everything is there for us. So they said that then you will gather all of the hunters together and bring all your implements, like all the things that you are going to be using. And so then you'll make a medicine, and they told us about the medicine that we'll use. And so they take that medicine, they said, and wash all of the implements that you're going to use. So wash your bows and arrows, wash your knives, wash all the your axes, your guns, all the different things. Today we use guns, but back then, wash all of those things in medicine. And they said, and then, you'll go and you'll wash your clothes and wash your garments, wash them in medicine as well. And then you'll wash your bodies in medicine and you'll drink that medicine. They said you'll make a sweat lodge and you'll go into that sweat lodge and you'll drink medicine and you'll purify yourself so that when you come out, of that sweat lodge, all of your implements and all the things that are necessary for you to harvest are all waiting there for you. They said you will gather up all of your implements, and you will go and you'll start your way to the longhouse. But in the meantime, then all of the people will gather in the longhouse, and so they'll be waiting for the hunters. And so as the hunters are coming in, a long time ago they talked about this idea of we have a song called the standing quiver dance. And so a long time ago they talk about that was a hunting song. Today it's a social dance song. But they talk about then when we come in to the longhouse and we have all of our implements, that as we come in and we dance like in a counterclockwise way, that we would put our implements into the middle of the circle. And then we would dance around that and sing that song. They talk about you would dance around that and sing that song 3 times, and then you'll sit down and gather your seats, and then they'll have a person that's appointed to be able to burn tobacco for creation and for the human beings, for the things that are going to be taking place, to give thanks for them. And so they talk about then, as the speaker gets up and he puts tobacco in the fire and he calls out to Oskanundum, they talk about, deer. You've all seen deer, where, for many of you that have seen them, you see what they look like. They'll be eating their grass and they'll do their stuff, their deer stuff. Then all of a sudden, how their ears kind of go like this? They turn and they smell tobacco and they turn their ears like this and they listen to the words. And they said, listen to the human beings, they're talking to us. they're talking about us, they're using our name. And so they're listening to them, and they're saying, now the human beings are assuming the ancient responsibility and the ancient relationship that we've had so long time ago. And so now they're getting ready to come for us. And they're listening to us, and they're listening to the songs, they're listening to and hearing those dances. They smell tobacco, and they listen to those words, and they said, okay, now the human beings are getting ready to come. So they turn to all of the rest of the deer nation, all the rest of the deer people. They look at all the rest of the deer people, and they gather them all together, and they say, okay, which one of us now loves the Creator so much that will fulfill our ancient responsibility and give up our lives to help the human beings? And so they don't take the little small ones that still have spots on their back. That's the little babies. They haven't had a chance to grow. They don't take the ones that are, that don't have antlers, the ones that are the females, the ones that are the women, because they're the ones that carry life. And so they don't take that one. And they don't take the ones with the great big antlers on their head. Those are their leaders. That's their grandfathers. That's their teachers. And so they don't take them ones, because those are the ones that are the helpers of all of the deer nation. They take the ones like some of these young guys right here that are young, that have small antlers on their head, that got lots of strength and power. That's the ones that they take. And so they talk about that. And they then get ready. Now the human beings, once that tobacco is burned for Oskunundo, and all of the people hear the words, then they start that song one more time, that standing quiver dance. And they start that song, and they talk about that. And there's one part in that song where the beat, or the tone of the singer changes, and at that time, that's when, instead of like just straight stomp dance kind of thing, they stop and they turn and they look, and as they dance, they look into the center, and they put their power and strength, and they honor and send gratitude to all of the things that they'll be using. And so at that point, when they finish up and they go around that circle 3 times, they grab all their implements, and they head out to where they head out to begin their hunting. So when they go out hunting, they go into a spot, where Oskunundo is going to be. And so you take your tobacco and you go there, and you get ready with your tobacco, and you put your tobacco out, and you call out to him, Oskunundo, I'm here. This is my name, and this is, what I'm fulfilling our ancient relationship with one another, and I'm waiting for you. And so, for many of you that are hunters, and I know for myself it's happened that way, that they will actually come out, and you'll see them come out, and they'll look at you, and they know you're there, and so they see you, they come straight out, and then they'll turn sideways, and they'll wait, and they'll look at you. And then, so that's the time you take your shot like that. So today, we think and we see different things on TV in different places, like, oh, somebody makes that shot, it's like, oh yeah, look at me, what a great hunter that I am. Like I'm so lucky, or I'm so good, I got this animal, I did this, and this, and look at me, how good I am. We're not supposed to be that way, because now we've had to take the life of our brother. And so we're happy that we have, food, and we have meat, and we have clothing, that at the same time we're saddened because we've had to take that brother's life. And so now we go up to him, in honor and respect for him, and we give him our tobacco, and we say, thank you. Thank you for giving your life for me, to me. Thank you for helping me. And thank you for fulfilling your ancient responsibility that you have done so faithfully. All of the thousands of generations of deer people has helped us, the human beings. And so now I'm thanking you that you've given up your life. And so just like our great ancestors were told so long time ago, and this is in that speech that you used to them, this is what we were told to do. So they said, in this process then, we'll take the hide off your body and we'll use that for our clothing and for our, our shirts and our leggings, our moccasins, our bags, all types of different things that we want to use. We'll use it for all of those things, and we'll use all of your hide. They said from your body, you have flesh on your body. We'll take that, and this is where the flesh is going to go. If it's going to go for you to feed your family, then you tell it that. If it's going to go to somebody else, there's the elder that can no longer hunt anymore, and now that your flesh is going to go to help sustain him and his family, or her and her family. Or maybe somebody doesn't have, maybe somebody doesn't have a husband or doesn't have a partner. It's like, okay, your flesh is going to go to them, and this is their names, this is the name of their children that you'll feed. And so you introduce and connect them between that way. And as you take that, take and return back to that, you'll say, that's where that flesh is going to go. So give that power and strength to make them strong and healthy. And then, they say from your bones, we'll even take your bones and we'll make them into tools and different things, different implements that we'll use to be able to help us. And they talk about even down to the little hooves that you have at the end of your feet. Those little hooves, we'll take them and clean them out and we'll put them on. And for men, we put them on as part of like our gaiters or garter around our knees, and all of those things, they click together when we dance. For other people, they put them on their shirt. For women, they put them on their skirts or on their bags, and they click together when people walk or when people dance. So that when you hear us and we're dancing in our longhouse and in our ceremonies, when you hear that clicking of those little hooves like that, we're giving thanks that you have given up your life, that we now have power and strength so that we can live. And so we're dancing to thank you. So when you hear that clicking, you realize that we're thanking all of creation that has given its life for us. And so we're showing our appreciation and gratitude to them. And then now they talk about, even from those little horns on top of your head, we'll take those horns and we'll give them to our men leaders. So amongst us as the Haudenosaunee, as the Six Nations people, whenever you go to any of our meetings or government meetings or our ceremonies, and you see people men that have their gastoas on, that have horns sticking out of their gastoa, those are our leaders, those are our chiefs. So they'll talk about, we'll take those little horns off your head and we'll give them to our male leaders to signify that they, just like you, have given up your life, have given up their life to be of service to us, the people. Because as you may know, within our traditional form of government, that it's 24/7, 365 days for all the length of your life. That's a leader. That's the real leader. So as they give up their lives to sustain us, our leaders also give up their lives to help us as the human beings. And so that's the significance of those horns that you see them on our leaders' heads, on their gastoas. So now we've talked about all of that process, and so now we carefully pick up his body and we bring him back. In the old days, they talk about they bring them back to the longhouse and they put their bodies, outside. They put their bodies they organize them, and they'll sing that song again, as they come through. And they'll sing that Standing Quiver song again, and they'll dance around that. And then they'll make a fire and burn tobacco and thank them. And again, that time that I mentioned to you before, when that song changes, and instead of going in a straight direction, you turn and you look at them this way, you're giving honor and thanks to them that they've given up their life for you in that song. So then they stop and they burn